The last watcher of the silent fortress. The northwest frontier of ancient China was a place of harsh winds, endless dunes, and silence that seemed to stretch beyond the horizon. Few ventured there willingly, and fewer still lingered after sunset. But the fortress of Wangchuan, once a bustling outpost along the Silk Road, was different. 100 years ago, it had thrived. Merchants passed through with silk and jade, soldiers stood guard in bronze-studded armor, and the sound of the watch drums echoed each dawn and dusk. Now, half buried under drifts of yellow sand, it was a carcass of stone and memory. Li Zhou, a repairman for the provincial courier stations, had been ordered by the county yamen to inspect the old relay post within the fortress walls. The job was routine: check for structural hazards, report damages, but the location was infamous. The locals whispered about the last watcher who still patrolled the fortress at night, a solitary figure carrying a lantern through the wind. They spoke of heavy footfalls on the battlements, long after the last soldier had died. Li Zhou had heard many ghost stories in his life, and believed none of them. If a place is quiet enough, even the wind starts telling tales, he had told the innkeeper the night before his journey. He arrived at Wangchuan just before dusk. The fortress walls loomed like jagged teeth against the setting sun, and the wind drove fine grains of sand into his eyes. He found shelter in the half-collapsed relay station, its roof patched with old boards, its doors hanging loose, and set down his food and tools. The first night, the wind died down after midnight. That was when he heard it. A low, resonant thump. Thump, as if a great drum were being struck in the distance. Rising from his bedroll, Li Zhou stepped outside, oil lamp in hand. There, on the crumbling wall, a figure moved slowly along the battlements. The person carried a long pole with a dim, golden lantern swinging from its tip. Every few dozen steps, the figure stopped, gazing out into the dunes as though expecting something to emerge from the dark. "Hey!" Li Zhou called out. "Are you from one of the nearby villages?" The figure turned its head slightly, but the light from the lantern did not reveal a face. Without answering, it resumed its patrol, the lantern swaying like an ember in the wind until it vanished at the far corner of the fortress. The second night, the watcher appeared again. Same measured pace, same silent vigil. This time, Li Zhou decided to follow. He climbed the uneven stairs to the wall, careful not to let the old stone crumble underfoot. The cold was sharp, and the sand made a hiss beneath his boots. At the northwest corner, he caught up just enough to see the watcher clearly. A tall man in weathered lamellar armor, the kind worn a century ago, with a fur-lined helmet casting his face in shadow. The lantern's light was strange, steady, without flicker, even in the wind. Li Zhou called again, more cautiously. "Friend, are you on some kind of guard duty?" The man halted. Slowly he turned toward Li Zhou, and in that moment the wind dropped to a dead hush. Beneath the helmet, the man's eyes gleamed faintly, not with life, but with the dim, steady glow of embers deep in an old brazier. Li Zhou's throat went dry. Without a word, the watcher pointed out toward the desert. "They are late tonight," he said, his voice low and hollow, as if carried from far away. Then, without waiting for a reply, he resumed his patrol. Li Zhou stood frozen until the figure vanished once more into the mist of sand. Li Zhou hardly slept that night. At dawn, he searched the fortress for signs of recent human presence, footprints, ash from a campfire, discarded belongings, but found nothing. The sand on the battlements was undisturbed except for his own tracks. By midday, curiosity gnawed at him. He went into the nearby hamlet to question the elders. Most avoided his eyes, muttering prayers under their breath, but one weathered old man agreed to speak. "You saw him, didn't you?" the elder asked without preamble. Lao Zhou hesitated, then nodded. "They call him Captain Han Wei," the old man said. "A century ago, during the northern campaigns, he commanded the fortress garrison. One winter, word came that a supply caravan was on its way from the east. Han Wei ordered his men to hold their posts until it arrived. But before the caravan could reach them, a sudden blizzard swept in from the desert. The roads were buried, the wells froze, and the fortress became a tomb. When reinforcements came months later, they found every man dead. Every man except Han Wei, who still stood on the wall with a lantern in his hand. They say he took one last breath to report. No enemies sighted. Then he fell where he stood. The elder's eyes grew distant. Since then, the captain has never left his post. He waits each night for the caravan that never came." Li Zhou shivered despite the sun. "And no one has ever tried to speak to him? To tell him the war is over?" The elder shook his head. "Would you wake a soldier who died fulfilling his duty? His vigil is all he has left." That night, Li Zhou returned to the battlements. The wind was sharp, slicing through his cloak. Once more the watcher appeared, pacing with the same deliberate rhythm. But now, Li Zhou noticed something new. Every time the captain paused to peer into the dunes, there was a flicker in his eyes, a trace of longing rather than vigilance. Li Zhou followed him to the northwest corner. "Captain Han," he said, the name tasting strange on his tongue. The watcher stopped. Slowly, he turned. The lantern's golden glow lit his armor, revealing cracks in the plates, like dry earth under the sun. "The caravan is late," Han Wei murmured. Li Zhou swallowed. "Captain, the caravan will not come. The war ended long ago. Your men, they're gone." For a moment, Han Wei stood motionless. Then, he spoke with a quiet certainty. "If I leave my post, who will watch the border? Who will light the way for those still crossing the sands?" Li Zhou felt a knot in his chest. "You've done more than anyone could. Let me keep watch for you, just for tonight." Rest Han Wei's gaze lingered on him for a long time. Then, slowly, he extended the lantern. The handle was warm in Li Zhou's hands, the light steady and impossibly calm. The captain stepped back, as if the wind itself were pulling him away. His form grew fainter, edges blurring into the night. "If the caravan arrives, tell them we waited." With that, he was gone. For the rest of the night, Li Zhou walked the wall, the lantern lighting the dunes. He Tuid saw nothing but sand and shadow. Yet he understood why Han Wei had stayed. The light was not for enemies or allies, but for anyone lost in the darkness. When dawn came, Li Zhou found himself alone, the lantern still burning in his hand. He left the fortress that day, but the lantern remained in his care. And sometimes, on long journeys through the borderlands, travelers would speak of a solitary watchman carrying a golden light, sometimes a soldier in old armor, sometimes a quiet man in a simple cloak. The border was silent now, but the watch was never abandoned.